Neil, is it still just Stephen and me?
Here comes Ken.
Okay.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, how are you, Sabrina?
Good. How are you?
Surviving. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Hi, Anna. All right. So Jeff, Neil, you said he might be calling in.
Yes, you got the call-in number. I think he's traveling, so.
Okay. We can get started. There's some sort of dispute over devices happening outside my office, so I apologize if there's interrupting background noise.
As long as you get first dibs.
Yeah. I'm on a device that is making me, I have like a delay on my end, which is kind of distracting, but as long as I sound and appear clear to you all. Okay. Hi, Jeff. All right, I'll start in on my, are we good, Neil?
We are good.
All right, I'll do my right to know law meeting checklist. Hi, everybody. As chair of the Hopkinton Select Board, due to COVID-19/coronavirus, and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm we are doing the following. A, providing public access to the meeting by phone with additional access by video.
Srini, I don't have any sound for you anymore.
No.
Meeting ID is 340-316-049. We've
You're back.
also provided a Zoom address. Stephen, did you say something?
Yeah, I lost your audio for a second.
Okay.
You came back, but
Okay. I'll repeat the phone number, which is 646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 340-316-049. Did you guys catch that? All right, let me know if it happens again. I can switch computers. Okay, so B, we're providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom. Instructions are on the Town of Hopkinton's website at hopkinton-newhampshire.gov and on the Town of Hopkinton's Facebook page. C, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems. If anyone has a problem with access, please call 603-746-8242, or you can email townadmin@hopkinton-newhampshire.gov. D, adjourning the meeting if the public's unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn and have it rescheduled. A few things to keep in mind: this meeting is being recorded and will be available to watch at a later time. The link will be on the town website. The select board is unmuted, but everyone else is muted. If you have a question during the meeting, you can use the chat feature, or you can raise your hand. And also during public forum, lines will be unmuted to allow people to speak. And note that all votes will be taken by roll call. So we will start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. So everybody just state your name, where you are, and whether there's anyone in the room with you, which is required under the right to know law. So this is Sabrina Dunlap. I am alone at my house. Stephen Whitley.
Stephen Whitley, finishing a bite. I'm alone in this room at my house. Thank you.
All right, Ken.
Ken Traum, and I am similarly alone in my house.
Anna.
Anna Wells. I'm alone in this room at my house.
See Jeff, I can't hear him. He
I haven't
should-
heard Jeff. It says, it looks like he's still muted.
Yeah.
Does he need to be brought over as a panelist?
He's been allowed to talk, and I clicked ask to unmute.
Is there something he has to do on his end? Like does he have to punch in a number or anything, unmute?
He should be able to unmute. Unless he lost service somewhere along the way.
Unmute. Oh,
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
We got you.
Good Lord. I don't know. I did what it said 17 times. This is Jeff Donahoe, and I am not alone. I am in the truck with my lovely wife, but she can't hear you now because we had to take it off Bluetooth.
This will be delightful for her to overhear. All right, thanks, Jeff. Glad you could join. Am I clear still? I'm just like, it's super distracting. It's like having an echo. I have this delay, but am I still clear to you all?
You're kind of going in and out, I think.
All right.
Glitch.
Let me, Neil, could I ask you to do the points of pride? I'm going to switch devices.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to exit out. I'll be right back.
So the points of pride I have really are the big event that's coming up next week, which is the election, and really sort of the clerk's office is working crazily. I think there are over 1,000 absentee ballots already. The highway crew was over this morning, over to the high school this morning and set up the ballot booths. So we're getting that all set up. The supervisors are working hard, getting everything done. Sarah Parashino, the moderator, has been coordinating all the meeting. So it's really a full effort. So I just want to highlight that because I think that's the big thing going on right now.
Oh, I want to add that the DPW, beside everything they're doing relating to the election, they've been doing an awful lot in terms of roads and culverts around town. If you notice, and whether it was Kearsarge or Briar Hill or Pennacook or Cedar, so I wanted to thank Dan and his team for all the work they're doing there. And I'd also like to note that the library is opening to an extent for people to go inside.
I'm sorry, Jeff, do you mind muting your phone? I think that we're getting a lot of the background noise there.
Better, anyway.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like he.
Hope he can come back when he needs to. Sorry, Ken, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I thought I was finished. Neil, look, Do you know about how many voters we normally get in a primary?
I don't know. I probably knew at one point.
Yeah,
but
I
lost
mean,
that number.
1,000 sounds like quite a high percentage.
Yes, I think it is. Jean is
Did
on.
you-
When Jean comes
Jean
on
said-
to talk about elections, I bet she can tell you exactly.
If you just put in the Q&A in the chat, 1,700.
Wow, so we're over 50% already.
All right, I'm back. Am I clear?
Seems better. Yeah.
Okay, good. I think I overwhelmed my little Chromebook there.
Oh yeah, Zoom and Chromebook does not work.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed points of pride. Are we done with them? Yes, okay. I'll catch up on them later. I'll watch the recording. Okay, so we can move on to the approval of the consent agenda.
Sure. I'll move we approve the consent agenda of Monday, August 31, 2020.
Second with me to sign?
Thank you, Jeff. All right. Sabrina's a yes. Ken,
Yes,
Anna,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jeff. Approval of the public meeting minutes of August 17th, 2020. And I did send Neil a couple of edits. There was just one line that I think taken out of context could be a little misconstrued about, I commented that on the Bates building that I felt like we made a really compelling case based on financials for selling it. And it's now been voted down twice. So I commented that perhaps the message is that money is not the number one priority. That's the message from the voters. That was not my opinion. So I just added a little detail to my comments there so that it's a little clear what I was saying.
What page is that on, Brini?
That was page 6,
Okay.
bottom of page 6. It just said that I said money's not a priority.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
So I
Okay.
felt I should probably add a little more detail as to what I meant when I said that.
Okay.
did you have anything else?
No, did anyone else have any edits? All right.
I'll move we approve the public meeting minutes of August 17th, 2020 with the changes just outlined by Sabrina.
Second.
All right. Sabrina's yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes,
Anna,
Yes.
and Jeff.
Yes.
You. Okay. Approval of the non-public meeting minutes from August 17th, 2020.
so moved.
Second.
Any edits or anything? All right. Sabrina's a yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes,
Anna. You're muted, but now you say yes. All right, Jeff.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, Sarah Pacino has been brought over. Our first appointment.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Sarah.
Hello, moderator.
It's
How are
nice to
you?
see all. Great. Just getting ready. We've got 8 days left till the state primary, which is very exciting. So I appreciate the time tonight just to give you a few updates on what has been happening since we last spoke. The first thing that I want to highlight is that we did send out a town-wide mailer with election information last week. I know it's hit mailboxes because I've gotten a few calls from people with questions, which is great. It's really the purpose is to try to get as much information out there as possible. I am really thankful for everyone who helped volunteer their time to put together that mailing, which was a little bit cumbersome, but we got through it. And I'm also just want to thank, of course, Neil Cass, Carol Harless, Jean Lightfoot, and all the town employees and election officials who are helping to make the primary possible in our town. The biggest thing that's happened logistically since the last time we spoke is that the New Hampshire Attorney General and the Secretary of State issued their joint guidance on election operations during this public health crisis. So you can find that at the DOJ's website. It's a very long link in their press release section, but I think Neil has it if you all want to take a look at it. It's comprehensive, but I just want to highlight a few of the topics that we've addressed in our plans. So a question we've gotten this year is whether we could do drive-by voting like we did for the town and school meeting. We cannot do that because statewide elections are regulated by a different RSA, a different statute, but they are permitting the use of drop boxes for absentee ballots that have been completed. So like we did for drive-by voting, people who have already requested their absentee ballot and received that can leave their completed ballot in that staff drop box on election day. It'll be in the same spot where people did drive-by voting before. The same rules apply to absentee ballot drop-off on election day, though. They have to be delivered before 5 p.m. An individual or delivery agent can use the drop box. Delivery agents just have to show identification and complete a return of ballot form. Anyone who comes after 5 p.m. will be told that their absentee ballots cannot be accepted, but they can still vote by entering the polling place. I also want to make sure that while we're talking about drop boxes, everyone knows that people can still not leave absentee ballots in the drop box at town hall. That is very different. That's not staffed, so please don't do that. If you're a little worried about getting it into the town clerk's office on time, you can just save it for election day and do it that day if that makes you more comfortable, if that's easier for your schedule. Hopefully this gives everybody a little more access to dropping off their ballot. The other thing I want to highlight about absentee ballots, like Neil said, because we've had so many requested, we are going to be counting those ballots earlier this year. So in accordance with state law, we are going to start counting ballots at 8 a.m. on election day, which is 1 hour after the polls open. We've posted that publicly on the website. People can observe that process. I just want everyone to know that, because if an individual who has already submitted an absentee ballot wants to vote on election day, they just need to get there before 8 a.m. because we can't guarantee that their ballot wouldn't have been counted after 8 a.m. So they wouldn't be able to do that. The other big piece of guidance that we got from the Attorney General and the Secretary of State is that moderators can choose to mandate masks inside the polling place. So we have made the decision, I've made the decision to do that in Hopkinton in conjunction with guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and the New Hampshire Division of Public Health, which both recommend that face coverings and masks are an important component to COVID-19 mitigation. So I have talked about this with my fellow election officials in Hopkinton, and I think it's an appropriate precaution that we can take to help ensure the health and safety of our election workers and all voters. So all voters entering the polling location and all election workers will be asked to wear a mask. For those who don't have one, we will be supplying them outside of the polling location. We have some PPE that was provided by the state, which is great. Again, I want to reiterate here that we will not be allowing masks in that have political slogans, campaign slogans on them because of electioneering. Just like you can't wear a candidate's t-shirt into the polling location, you also cannot wear a mask that has a candidate's name or party affiliation. Anyone who will not or cannot wear a mask inside the polling location will have an alternative voting location outside. Legal counsel is currently reviewing the proposed alternative plan that we put together. And as soon as those details have been approved, I'll make sure you get them. The general concept is that there will be 2 election officials located at the same area where the drive-by absentee ballot drop box will be. And there will also be a little voting table set up. They'll get checked in. Someone will walk a ballot out to them. It is not an absentee ballot process. It is just like voting inside, and no one will be asked to sign an absentee affidavit. They'll be counted as the same day in-person voter for all intents and purposes. It's just because they aren't wearing a mask, they'll be asked to do that outside. It should be as seamless as inside as much as possible. And we'll also have that area taped off in case a line forms so that we can ensure social distancing. The other thing, I know you all have on your agenda tonight a discussion about a town-wide mask policy. And I just want to make really clear for everyone that my decision to have a mask mandate for the town the polling location is separate to the conversation the select board is having. So regardless of what you decide tonight or in a subsequent meeting, there will still be a requirement for voters to wear a mask inside the polling place. In addition to the state guidance we received that I just went over, we've incorporated into our election day planning a designated area for campaign volunteers who choose to hold signs outside the polls on election day. So to make sure that every voter who's going into the polling entrance has a socially distanced walkway to get through, we're going to just ask that the volunteers who are there with campaigns are in the area where the outdoor picnic seating is adjacent to the parking lot before you get to the entrance. So it's still 10 feet away from the entrance, which is a requirement of state law. And there should be plenty of space there for people to socially distance and have enough space to hold their signs. But if anyone has questions, of course, they can reach out to me. We are going to be doing a walkthrough of the new setup inside tomorrow with the election officials and with Neil Cass, which is super exciting. If we have more to share after that, I will make sure we do that. And tomorrow we're also going to be doing a training for ballot clerks and election inspectors to make sure everyone is up to speed on the new procedures that we have put in place. I think that's it. I know Jean Lightfoot is also on the phone, so she can chirp in if I miss something. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Jean, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
No, I think Sarah hits all the points. I think Neil and I have been in the same meetings and discussions. I think, yeah, she hit everything, and hopefully I feel like we've done the best we can to plan this, and hopefully it will go as smoothly as we plan for it to do.
Great. Yeah. And Sarah, thank you. I mean, I know that mailing was a labor of love, and you have worked really hard to get all of this stuff straight. It's hard to keep track of. It's difficult when information is not coming from the state all at once. It's sort of trickling out. So thank you. And thank you, Jean, and everyone else who's helping with this process. It is not easy. So really appreciate your efforts here. Sarah, will you just repeat this one thing I got a little lost on? You mentioned something about people who need to get there before 8 a.m. Will you just repeat that little bit?
Sure. So New Hampshire state law provides that if you have submitted your absentee ballot, we don't count that before election day. We cannot count that before election day. We can count it up to starting an hour after the polls open. Typically we do it later in the day, but because we have so many this year, we're doing it at 8 a.m. So anyone who decides after they've already submitted their absentee ballot that they actually want to vote in person for whatever reason would just have to get there before 8 a.m. to make sure that their absentee ballot has not been counted. Because once their absentee ballot has been counted and they're crossed off the checklist, they can't vote in person that day.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that.
Hopefully it helped.
Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions, points of clarification?
I do, Sarah and Jean, thank you for all you're doing. Do you have enough staff?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I also want to thank both of you for offering to explain the process at Rotary this Wednesday morning.
We're going to be a well-oiled machine by then.
You already are.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks again, Sarah. What a time, moderator.
If I have just one more minute, I just would encourage everyone to be patient with the ballot clerks and election officials who are working on election day, because all of this is new to us and we are working very hard to comply with the new guidance. But if there are any hiccups, just be patient. We're doing our best.
Yes, very important. All right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you.
So we had Alyssa Best and Ruth Chevion for 6 o'clock, but I think Neil said that they are not going to do an appointment.
That's correct. They will come into the next meeting on September 14th. Unbelievable.
Okay.
The next next meeting is September 14th, but
Okay, so we can move on to old business then. The first thing is town treasurer.
Stephen may have more to say too. He contacted the Joel Moyer, who is interested and has submitted his resume, and it looks like he's very qualified.
Yeah, so this actually came at the recommendation of our outgoing treasurer, Kevin Davis. He said, you know, I recognize that this is a spot that needs to be filled. You should think about Joel. So I reached out to Joel and just told him, you know, what was going on the town side after Kevin's resignation had been public, and asked him to consider it. He then had a conversation with Kevin and then followed up with Neil. So I trust that he has a pretty good sense about what the position requires. And I take it that his submission of a resume for us to consider is him indicating that he is open to serving as the treasurer to finish out Kevin's term. So that's about all I know. I kind of deferred any questions over the role of the treasurer to Neil and Kevin, as they're know way more about it than I do. But I know Joel a little bit socially. From what I know about him, I think he'd be a fine candidate. And looking over his resume, it does appear that he has the necessary qualifications to do this job. So Neil, I don't know if you want to add anything of your conversations with him.
Sure. I only know him from the conversation I had in looking at his resume, and he seems very qualified. He seems like he would be a great person for this. And based on the questions and what he had asked, he spoke with Kevin before he had spoken with me. He asked good questions, and I think between Kevin and I, we had really given him all the information, so he knows exactly what needs to be done.
Hey, Jackson. I have to say, I was really, really happy to see Joel's name in the mix. I think he would be great for it. So, yeah, thanks to Kevin for recommending.
I was going to say, I do not know Joel. Like, I read his resume. It seemed to be a good fit. My question was, we would be appointing him until this town meeting?
Yes, till March.
Yeah, okay. And then it would be would it be a 3-year term after that?
Well, it would be 2 years to fill Kevin's term.
Oh, okay, because then Stephen, what you said was a little bit misleading in terms of he wouldn't be filling out Kevin's term, he'd just be taking it till March.
Yep,
Okay,
I may have gotten that wrong.
okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
I think I'm right. I will confirm. I'll read the statute and make sure. There's only a few positions that go all the way, but I don't think this is one of them.
Can we take action tonight to approve this, or?
I think you can. I think you could vote to appoint him as the town treasurer.
Okay, great.
Effective tomorrow.
Excellent. Any
I
other,
sorry.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I was going to make the motion, but I made it.
Okay, I just wanted to say, any other questions or comments? All right, Stephen's making a motion.
So I would move that we appoint Joel Moyer to serve out either a year until the next town meeting or the remainder of Kevin's term, whichever the law allows us to do, which Neil will check on. And so, yeah, he's going to be serving as our kind of our interim treasurer.
I'll second.
Excellent. All right, Sabrina's a yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
and Jeff.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Yes, thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. All right, next under old business is road bond / refinancing.
So I sent spreadsheets that showed the new road bond information with the quotes we've received so far, as well as the refinancing for the 2015 road bond and included and the refinancing of the fire station. So I don't know. It seemed from all of those that the municipal bond bank was the way to go, and the numbers included with a 1.5%, but they came in substantially below that, and I think they're expecting that. So I think that's a fairly conservative number. So it looks like that's where the that would be the most savings, and it looks like there is fairly substantial savings by refinancing the other two at the same time, and it doesn't extend any of those beyond where they are. It's just keeping them in the same years that they're already in.
Okay, Neil, just so I understand what you said, the number you have from the bond bank is not a hard number yet. When would it become a hard number?
When they go out to sell,
Which is?
Maybe January or February, I think,
yeah.
is the next sale.
Okay. Okay. And I believe in at least some of the versions for the municipal bond bank, in effect, we wouldn't be making payments in 2021 for the existing road bond or the fire station.
That's the way it falls. So the schedule you have is how it falls.
Okay, so I guess I just wanted to make the board aware that that's going to make our budgeting look a lot easier next year, but it's going to be sort of a false signal, because we should probably put money away, and because the bond amounts will be going up in the future years. But I just felt it was important to point that out.
So I guess at this point, you don't necessarily have to vote, but if you want us to pursue, I guess the question is pursue the bond bank, especially for the 2020 road bond, and whether you want us to pursue the refinancing through the bond bank for the other two.
I would think we would want to pursue the bond bank for all three.
And do I understand right that we're going to are we combining two of these three bonds together?
The 10 years we're combining because it's
Okay.
the same amount for the same amount of time.
Okay.
It,
Okay.
it fell that way.
Okay. Do we see any savings from that combination?
We do.
Yeah, yes, pretty significant.
Here comes the.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
So under the bond bank, combining the two, this is the total amount. So it lowers it quite a bit. This is the bond bank. Let me get my bearings. So the interest, for example, is 353, where if we didn't refinance the fire the fire station, it would be 544. So it is substantial savings to refinance.
Okay. Thank you, Neil.
So Neil, do you need any kind of a motion now, or just the sense of the board that you should proceed investigating the bond bank?
Yeah, if that's the sense of the board, we'll start doing all the paperwork, and then you would vote on that completely, which we will do.
Yes.
I think we're
Yeah,
everybody in
agree.
agreement here. Okay.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Okay, so next is George Park plan.
Sure. So just an update, the plan was in your packet that was voted, and then the survey was done, and largely the question that was being looked at was, would the men's softball field, a field big enough for men's softball, fit? And before the survey was done, it was iffy. Now that the survey's done, it does fit. So it's not really a different plan or moving anything other than making that field slightly longer. So you have the existing and you have that. I don't know what other information you would need, because it's largely conceptual as we move forward.
So you don't need any, there's no action to take on this.
If you feel comfortable, if you want to take action just to confirm that it does fit, but it doesn't really move anything other than forward and backward, but that would all be part of construction of anything. It gets adjusted in that, but it would fit. So if men's softball wanted to pursue lights, which is what they want.
Hold on, Jeff, Jeff just came off mute and suddenly we couldn't really hear Neil. So now you're back, Neil. Okay.
Sure. So this would give us the spot if there was lights were pursued for Blood Field, we would know where they are that would fit in the conceptual plan, and that could happen. It's really what I think the big question is.
So accommodating the slightly bigger field doesn't add cost or labor or anything.
Yeah, it may add a little, but not really.
Right.
It's all big part. It's insignificant in the overall.
It would be pennies
Yeah.
on like fractions of pennies on the dollar
Yeah.
for the whole plan. So
To add a few feet of grass.
Yeah.
We're already doing it all anyway, so.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I'm glad that worked out. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that issue.
did Jeff have something to
I
say?
don't know. Jeff, are you trying to talk?
Jeff does have something to say.
Oh, good. Okay.
Again, I wasn't on the board the first time the vote was taken. Full disclosure, I'm the treasurer of the Men's Softball League, have been for about 20 years. We had a championship yesterday. It was a great event. We are the only adult men's recreation program in town, as far as I know. My only concern is that the prior vote approved shortening that field to 200 feet, while we had argued that it should be held at 235 feet. And now Neil has indicated that will fit in the plan. And I just don't want to get down the road either when I'm not on the board or when construction starts and someone says, well, that was approved to go back to 200 feet. We're going to make it 200 feet. So that's and I don't know the ins and outs of what the vote, constituted in terms of an approval of the plan. If it's just everybody's agreeing that we're going to stay at 235, that's great. If we need a vote, I'm happy to make a motion. I'll get off mute. I'll get on mute now so you can hear me or hear yourselves.
Thanks, Jeff.
I was just going to say, if Jeff wanted to make the motion, I would second it.
Steven, do you have?
I was going to say, why don't we all vote on it and maybe Jeff sit this one out because he's the treasurer for the men's softball league.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
do think
totally fine with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do think though that we probably do need to vote to correct any prior vote to make it clear that we're not saying that if and when this comes to pass that the men's softball league is to be shortened to 200 feet. It looks like the plan allows for it to be 235. Is that the dimension, Neil? Did I get that right?
That is the dimension, yes.
Okay, so I guess I would move that to the extent there was any prior vote on the men's softball field being 200 feet, we're now correcting that so that it remains or will be constructed to 235 feet in accordance with these engineered plans that we have before us.
And I'll second.
One quick question. Sorry, I can't remember if we talked about this before, but I assume that this extension of the field doesn't have an adverse effect on women and girls softball, right? No. Okay, good.
No, because you could always play shorter. You could move a fence.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to double check.
And let's just be very clear too, that we're talking about Blood Field. So let's call it by name, not the men's softball field, which is like
Thank you.
not the
Yes,
full name,
okay.
though it is.
Friendly amendment there. All right. So Stephen made the motion. Ken seconded. All right. So Sabrina's a yes. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
and I believe Jeff will abstain.
Abstain.
All right. Great. Thank you. So I'm thinking maybe it might make sense for us to switch a couple things so that we can have the mask ordinance come before public forum, or maybe we can move public forum up. Yeah. Because I have a feeling people are here tonight who want to talk about the mask ordinance. So why don't we do the updates really quick? Roman 5 under old business, and then do mask ordinance and bump public comment up if everyone's okay with that. All right. I just think it might flow a little better. Things will be fresh in our mind. So if we could just do updates, we have Bates, Hopkins and Solar, and election coverage. So is everyone okay with this? All right, good. So on the Bates building, I have a quick update because I was tasked with talking to the Department of Charitable Trusts. I spoke with Tom Donovan today, who's the person that Ken, and I can't remember if it was just Ken and me or if someone else was with us. We went, was it just you and me, Ken?
Neil was with us.
Oh, Neil. Yeah. Okay. So we went, I guess, 2 years ago to chat about potentially selling the Bates building and how the proceeds would be possibly divided. And they sort of gave their blessing to split proceeds from a sale to the town library or between the town library and town hall. So I asked Tom today about lease options, and his take is that if we are intending to enter into a longer term lease, so even if we characterize it as month to month, or even like, a 6-month lease that we intend to renew, that we really should go before town meeting and get approval for a longer term lease. So he was less concerned about the actual use of the building, although he did say that a nonprofit sort of art space is a much sort of cleaner fit under the intentions of the original donation of the space to the town. So he felt that that is a good use. But even if we decided we wanted to try to put it out for, a business like a law firm or an accountant or something, even if we came up with like a month-to-month arrangement for a business, we really would need to take it to town meeting and get approval for a long-term lease if that's what we intended. So I thought that was interesting. So he seemed a little less concerned about the actual use and more concerned about our intent longer term. But to be clear, he did say that he felt that, a nonprofit certainly would be a more natural fit under the original donation, a nonprofit that's open for, public use and public enjoyment the way an art studio might be. So, or a gallery. Anyway, that was his take. And he didn't think that it would be a difficult thing logistically, that we would just have to go to probate court, but the DOJ would cooperate, or the Department of Charitable Trust would cooperate on this, and we could just do it with them. So that's the update on that end. I can't remember if anyone else was tasked with research.
I had thought that Neil was going to check about what kind of capital improvements we might be looking at down the road.
The only thing we have listed right now is, big thing is really the furnace, which we've noted, the boiler.
Okay. So at our last meeting, we decided to sort of stick with the status quo through the end of the year, I believe, right? Right, Neil? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure there's any action for us to take tonight. I do think that we have to decide. I mean, I suppose at the next town meeting, we could propose a sale again, or we could propose a long-term lease. But it sounds like if we are intending to enter into a sort of longer-term engagement with, you know, the artist group, then we really should put it before town meeting. And I think if and when we do that, and assuming we got approval, we could, I suppose we could revisit if we wanted to open it up for, you know, businesses to potentially try to enter into a longer term lease. But either way, we'd have to go to probate court. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
So Sabrina, are you saying that based upon Tom's suggestions that we cannot enter into an agreement with the arts group that would take us past March at this time?
Well, my take is we could probably stick with a month-to-month lease, and I don't think we need to have like a date certain that would end. I think that we would want to put it before the town, and I guess if it didn't go through, then we need to revisit it. But I would assume that if it then went through, we could at that point decide to enter into a year-long lease or something. But I don't think it's like so rigid that we would need to like cut off. I think it's just more of a general sense that rather than sort of muddling along month to month for years, we should just get it figured out. So it's not like he said that there was like a firm end date and we had to do it by town meeting, but it was more just this general notion that if that is what we want to do, enter into a longer term lease, we should just do it rather than limping along month to month forever.
Okay. I mean, I think the arts group was looking for some, you know, information about how long they could at least count on having the building. That's why I mentioned the March.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this might require additional conversation and discussion, but I think we've committed through the end of the year. We could say to them, we're going to put this before the town to try to enter into a longer term lease with the intention of entering into a longer term lease with your group. So that's one option. Give them a little more clarity.
To me, it sounds like we're not precluded from allowing the Art Society to continue renting until March. But if we decide, not tonight, but between now and then, that we want either the Art Society or some organization other than them to be the long-term tenant, then we need town meeting approval to get that authority. And we just don't know tonight, you know, we don't know a lot of things, but I mean, I think the Art Society has even said they need some time to think about what they may want to do and to, I think they were going to form a corporation or maybe a 501c3 and do some fundraising or at least put some feelers out. So it sounds like there's lots of information that we'll need before we can make that decision. But I guess I'm comfortable with us making it clear that the Art Society can stay in there for whatever the rental terms are currently until March. I think previously we said we were maybe going to increase the rent in January, but it feels a little unfair to do that if we're going to end up going to town meeting in March and trying to figure out long-term what the future is of the Bates building. So I guess if there's something we need to decide tonight, it's maybe, you know, are we okay with them staying there beyond January 1? And if so, is there any sort of change in their rent until town meeting?
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing. I pulled up the stipulation from 1998 when the town got approval for the town clerk tax collector to be there. And the language, I mean, it says it's for the benefit, charitable purpose, which is useful to the Hopkinton community. So I think, you know, to Tom's point, it is a much easier sell to put something in there that is for the public to enjoy and versus like, you know, a private business. I think you could probably make that argument, but I think it's less of a sure thing that the probate court would approve something like an accountant going in there versus a nonprofit arts society that's intended for the whole town to enjoy.
But just to be clear, Sabrina, as of right now, I believe they are a private business. They're not a 501c3 as they told us last time they were on the call.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. So right now our agreement's just with Ruth Chevion as an individual, I believe. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens with them in terms of forming a 501c3. I think there might be some other ways they could sort of formalize their existence that maybe is not a 501c3, but is still for the public to enjoy. But I think, you know, we've sort of committed to them through the end of the year. So I'm not sure we need to decide tonight, but I guess we should land somewhere, to Stephen's point about how we feel about January through March, what we're going to do with rent then. And I see Alyssa McCann, who I accidentally called Alyssa Best earlier because that was the name on the agenda. Her hand is up. So I don't know if we could bring her over quickly if she has something to add about the arts group.
Yeah, thanks. Alyssa Best is the last name I haven't used in a while, but I just wanted to share that we're actually in the process of securing a fiscal sponsorship, and that 501c3 is in our more 2 to 3 year plan per se. But to what you were saying, Sabrina, there are many ways to be a nonprofit that aren't necessarily a 501c3, recognizing the cost and logistical hurdles associated with achieving that status. But that it is our end goal. So I wanted to clarify, because as you were talking, you were mentioning what we might be doing. And I just wanted to share, like, we're in the process of figuring out fiscal sponsorship. We're in the process of figuring out what our name is and how to get that licensed. And then in the long term, 501c3 or other type of 501, depending on the end mission and goals of the organization, are all on the horizon. And then we're really excited to say that we've been in contact with the Hopkinton School District, and we're exploring a partnership for next year that'll focus a lot of our mission around student artists here in Hopkinton. So as we talk about betterment of the community, one thing that we're really invested in is not just showcasing adult artists, but creating space for our student artists to showcase. So that's all. Just wanted to add in some additional flavor as you're chatting.
Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, so this feels like it might be a bigger, or at least just an additional conversation. I don't think we need to make any decisions tonight unless people want to keep talking about this tonight.
Where it's going to be on the agenda in 2 weeks anyway, I just suggest we defer any further action.
Okay. All right, that sounds reasonable to me. We have a lot to get through. Okay, so next update would be Hopkinton Solar.
Sure, you received an update from them as far as they're moving forward. They also are interested in setting up a meeting either with the board to discuss their design criteria, because they'd really like to put an MOU together on that, the revised layout, either with the board, or I asked if they wanted to meet first with the joint town group that met with them before. And they, Dominic, who is the person I speak with the most, was going back and said he would get back to me on that, which would be the easiest. So I have not heard back from him, but I would guess in the very near future, they'll be scheduling a meeting either with the board or with the joint subcommittee of that for a full update on where they're at. And but they are continuing to move forward. They're doing some wetlands work right now, looking at cultural and historic areas within that area, just reviewing that just to make sure they're good. So things are moving forward.
I think that, I don't know about you, Ken, but I mean, I think my preference would be to have them meet with the joint town kind of committee. It just seems like that's more efficient than them doing a meeting with both towns. I mean, both towns are going to be impacted by the design. It's unlikely to be different in one town versus the other. But you know, if they really want to come in and talk to just this board, I guess that's fine.
I would agree with you, Stephen, and I'm just wondering on the Webster side, have they had turnover in select board members? Would it be a new person or somebody we've met with before?
Same person. Their town administrator left though, and she was involved in those two. So.
Okay, and their former chair left.
Oh, right. It's one of the board members who is their contact person now.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking there might be a lot more education for whoever's there from Webster, but I agree a joint meeting sounds appropriate.
That's it. I'll pass on to them that was sort of my thought too, that might be the most effective instead of doing separate meetings with each board.
All right, thanks, Neil. And our last update is election coverage.
Just election is Tuesday, not tomorrow, but next week. So just a reminder. And I think we've written down and you've coordinated when you're going to be there and you have roles. So if there's anything else, I think other than that, we will be good to go.
And can folks make it to the walkthrough tomorrow? No, I'm going to try to go. I'm
What
also
time?
happy.
What
I
time
think
is that?
Sarah said 5 or 5:30. So I'll try to go. And I'm planning on trying to be there most of the day. Does anyone else have any conflicts or any reason they can't be there?
I'm very uncomfortable going in spite of the great preparations that are being made. So I will plan to show up, but don't count on me for being there a lot of the time.
Yeah, I was gonna also volunteer to attend to the outside drop box needed because I too would prefer to be outside as much as possible. Because yes, despite the preparations, I am a little bit nervous about everyone being inside together.
The list I saw had you outside.
Oh, okay. All right, good. All right,
I'll
thanks.
be there for most of the day, but I am gonna have to duck out a little bit. I mean, prior to the closing of the polls due to some family obligations.
Yeah,
So late
I might
afternoon.
have to come and go a little bit that day too. All right, thanks everybody. Jeff, are you planning on being there all day?
I'm planning on being there as much as I'm needed. I had not seen any kind of a schedule, Neil. I apologize. So if I'm signed up for something, I don't know about it.
I'm not sure if the board is specifically signed up other than they're there when they can be.
Okay. All right, good.
I misunderstood. Thanks.
All right. All right, so I think we can now do discussion on the mask ordinance and then public comment, and then we can do new business and town administrator update non-public as well.
And I would just suggest, Brini, having, after we go back to the new business and updates, maybe having another public forum just for
Yeah.
people's questions to get answered on those other things.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll have a specifically mask oriented public forum and then.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I will just start by saying we did get a sort of quick read from outside counsel. I think generally speaking, doing a mask ordinance is well within our purview and something we could pursue if we wanted to. I circulated an article today, just, relaying that the science really backs up people wearing masks. And I've seen some folks comment that if you want to wear a mask, then you should just wear a mask, but I don't have to. But I would just also say there's a really important point to the fact that 2 people wearing masks is way more effective than 1 person wearing a mask. Because if I'm talking to Ken and I'm not wearing a mask, and unbeknownst to me, I'm spreading my germs everywhere, he's protected a little bit, but he's much more protected if I'm also wearing a mask. So I think that's really like the core of the argument for why these sorts of mandates and ordinances and rules exist. And I think, the science is pretty clear. This is well within our purview. I think it's a really tough issue because we have good numbers now, and I think folks in town do a pretty good job of wearing masks, but this is one of those situations where I'd rather be in front of it and on top of the issue, so to speak, rather than playing catch up and having, outbreaks around us and suddenly deciding we need to have a mask mandate. So I think that just adds a challenge, because if you wait until things are sort of bad enough numbers wise, then you've sort of missed the mark in terms of the public health piece of it. And it's sort of like the toothpaste is already out of the tube at that point. I do recognize, I think I actually got an email today regarding sports. And I know there was a lot of discussion at the school board meeting about athletics and whether or not students have to wear masks during sporting events. And so I think that's maybe something we should discuss as well. I don't know what we're doing, for rec sports. I don't know if that would be under sort of our umbrella to try to direct, Hopkinton Rec as to whether or not kids should be wearing masks when they're doing rec soccer and that sort of thing. So that's just something I want to throw out there. I also understand, there's issues around enforcement. And I think Neil can give us an update because he talked to Chief Pecora. And so I think enforcement is probably one of the biggest challenges and sort of roadblocks to moving forward with an ordinance or a mandate. So where I'm landing right now is, first of all, I want to be clear that my impression from our last discussion is that we were talking about just preliminary discussions. I think it would be remiss of us to not be having these conversations. This is exactly what we are tasked with doing as a select board, is to oversee the public health of this town. So I think it's totally makes sense that we're having this conversation. Where I land tonight is I think I'd feel comfortable sort of watching and seeing and waiting and seeing what happens with the numbers. And I know, kids are back at college. I know that it sounds like NEC has already had some cases. They're right next door. So I am comfortable taking more of a wait and see approach. I do think it's something we really have to stay on top of. I think it's something, if we decide not to move forward with next steps tonight, that we should definitely keep talking about this. And as things evolve and change, revisit it. I also wouldn't be opposed to doing something like a resolution where, it doesn't have the force of an ordinance, but it's us publicly declaring people should be wearing masks and businesses really should be asking that folks wear masks when they're inside. So those are my general thoughts. Happy to go around if others have thought. Well, actually, why don't we, I know I just jumped right in, but Neil, can you just tell us about your conversation with Chief Pecora?
Sure. We discussed it at our staff meeting, and there's a lot of concern around enforcement. It would be very hard to enforce. And it did come out, one of the recommendations was a resolution or recommendation that isn't an ordinance that has to be enforced.
All right, thanks, Neil. So I don't know if people want to weigh in on this. Ken, you're first to come off mute.
Sure. I think the resolution approach makes sense. The other thing I would put on the table, rather than, where Sabrina, you mentioned, well, we would wait and see what the numbers are. If they get bad, then we'd have to act. And maybe another way to do it, to speed it up if the numbers start getting bad, is have an automatic trigger. That if state testing over a 2-week period shows positive rates that are 5% or 10%, then we automatically trigger a mask ordinance. And I think that would be also more understandable to our citizens, and maybe then more enforceable.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting thought. Thanks, Ken.
I was going to suggest something exactly along those lines, that rather than basing a decision on sort of fear or arbitrary numbers, that we come up with a threshold, whether it's, like what the school district is using is new daily cases per 100,000 population for Merrimack County. We could use a similar metric, or we could use, we'd have to decide what the metric is that we want to use, and we'd have to decide what the threshold is. But another way is, that case positivity rate, maybe it's 5%. But I do agree that, our numbers are really looking really good right now. But I think we're about to enter somewhat of a different time, where, yes, college students are coming back to the state. We've had a couple of large events recently, and we just don't, because of the lag in testing and the lag in symptoms and all the asymptomatic cases, we just don't have good data today on what is actually happening right now. So I do think it's important that we track the data. And we're also sending our kids back to school, in less than 2 weeks. And I think it's, I think we have to think about calculating risk, and the idea that we would send our kids back to school doesn't necessarily mean that everything's great and we're fine, everything's safe. We're taking precautions in school. And I think if we want to keep our kids, if we want to keep schools open, which we absolutely do, and I agree that's like a top priority, then we maybe need to make some concessions in other areas that we might not like wearing masks everywhere else, to keep our numbers low. So those are just a couple of my thoughts. That I'm really into data, so I'm happy to track all that data. I'm doing it on my own anyway, so I'd love to do it for us as well.
All right, Stephen's off mute.
I am supportive of the concept of an ordinance. My kind of hesitations on that are, what's the scope and how do you enforce it? And I like this idea of a resolution as a way to just publicly say that we support mask wearing, but we're, kind of one step shy of an actual ordinance. I think what I would suggest, though, is that it's going to take some time on our part to hash out the scope, the enforceability, and the trigger aspect of this. That's not going to be quick. And so, if we're kind of in agreement about doing a resolution, then I would suggest we do a resolution, at the next meeting maybe, and then start working on an ordinance and a trigger and trying to answer all these questions. And once we get that draft ordinance done, we have another kind of public meeting or public hearing to go over what it would require if and when the trigger is triggered, and it springs into effect. Because I think otherwise, if we wait and do it all at once, it's going to be winter, and we may be scrambling to figure all this out. And I think we should use the time we have while the numbers are low to kind of think about this stuff. And, I think we should see what Concord does. I think they're voting tonight. And I would suggest that for a template for our ordinance, we take what they are considering or perhaps adopt and delete or add from that as we see fit as like a starting point for our conversation.
I think that's a really great approach, Stephen, that we move ahead with sort of a resolution and then take the time to really thoroughly vet any threshold number that any data that we'd want to use. I think that's a great sort of compromise and uses the resources that we have right now. And we can also, Concord's voting tonight. They're having a public hearing at 7. So that may be something to watch as well.
Yeah, and before I turn it over to Jeff, I did a quick scan of Newmarket, Plainfield, Enfield. I mean, they're relatively comparable in size, and they all have ordinances that they're relatively straightforward, and I would say incredibly reasonable. They're basically indoor spaces, businesses, town buildings. There's no mandate for people who are out on the sidewalk. There's no mandate for town trails. So it's relatively limited in scope, at least in those towns. And so I think we could look to Concord, but also look to some of these other towns that are closer in size and see what they've done. Anyway, all right, Jeff, looks like you're off mute.
I'm off mute now.
All right.
I don't understand the desire to follow Concord at all. Our town has nothing to do with Concord. Concord has so many different shopping areas. They could put 100 Hopkintons in the town. And we just don't have that many gathering places. I don't understand where you're all hanging out, where you're so at risk. I go to Colonial, I get what I need, I get out. I wear my mask while I'm there, I take it off when I get in my truck. But, we've had one case a month. That's it. And I just don't understand the fear that we're somehow doing it wrong. We went through tourist season. There's been hundreds of thousands of people from Massachusetts here. The numbers haven't spiked. I just don't understand why 6 months in we're having this discussion that everybody's suddenly concerned. I just don't understand it.
Okay.
I just respond to Jeff's point. I think Brini brings up a great idea to look at some of the comparably sized towns in addition to Concord. I just said Concord because the proximity to us and because they're a larger city. So I would think that their ordinance may be vetted pretty well before it goes before their city council. But, I totally agree with Jeff that, we're different than Concord. And so, I don't think we need to just copy what they do and then change the letterhead to the town of Hopkinton. And then the other thing I would just respond to is, the numbers have been really, really good. And I think that's why the idea of a trigger is, I think, a good one. So that if things start not to be good, and we can haggle on a different day about what that trigger actually is. But I do think it's prudent to have something in the bag and ready to go if and when that trigger happens, just to save us some time, which will be important because it could be saving people's lives potentially.
Yeah, I like your idea. And just, Jeff, I agree about we don't want to just copy Concord. That's why I mentioned the other towns. So I think, that's a point well taken. And it's hard to say, like, why are we doing this 6 months in? I understand where you're coming from, but the thinking and the science has changed. I mean, it's evolved since March, when people were being told you don't need to wear a mask. And so I think a lot of us have been watching that. And I sort of feel like we're all kind of playing catch up, because the science is pretty clear at this point that masks at least help. So they might not be, a foolproof way to protect yourself, but they're a good, easy way to help stop the spread of this virus. And that is now backed by a lot of really good scientists and people who study these things. And so I think that partly is at play here. Like, we now know this is something we really should be doing. And I think it's really common sense, which is why we do see so many people out and about with masks. But, I've heard plenty of anecdotes about folks going into stores in town, and there's people out and about without masks on. And so I think there is an issue there. But anyway, Ken, you're off mute now too.
Sure. I was just going to say, I had heard, Jeff's concerns, which are legitimate, 2 weeks ago, and I heard similar things from other people. And that's why I thought that the trigger is a reasonable approach to use. If things start going the wrong way, then we can automatically put in the mask ordinance. But if they stay the way they are, we don't have to.
I also want to just answer the question a little bit more about why are we discussing this now, 6 months in. I think Sabrina makes good points about the science becoming more robust and our knowledge becoming better. But I think, just to reiterate, we're opening up our schools again. I think, to me, that's a real indication that we need to be considering all the ways to keep our community safe. And there's a likelihood that, there have been cases in schools, and it's not unlikely that there will be cases in Hopkinton schools as well. So it's just another level of protection that we have at our disposal that we should use if we can. And here's why. My kids are not going to be attending school because I have a child with a pre-existing condition. So it's not about me. It's not about my kids. Granted, my husband will be there every day because he's a teacher, but as an adult, he can protect himself a little bit better and differently than kids can. He can stay away from other people and wear his mask all day. Unlike, I'm afraid kids are going to have some trouble with that. But so that's another piece of it that I think, why now? Because we're sending kids back into school. That's another point.
So it sounds like we pretty clearly are not, I think we all agree that we're not gonna take an immediate step on a ordinance tonight, but I personally would like to move forward with the idea of a resolution. And then I think it makes sense to at least have further discussion around this sort of trigger idea. I think that makes a lot of sense. And also to potentially have a draft, just, start working on a draft so that if and when we got to a point where we really felt like we needed to put an ordinance in place, then I think Stephen spoke to this earlier, we wouldn't be so far behind, because this is time consuming and we will have to have a public hearing on any proposed ordinance. And so I think, we can sort of take these gradual steps that get us ready and prepared if and when we need to really go there, but we won't do anything tonight. Is that a fair assessment? At least, Jeff, you might not be exactly on the same page, but are you okay with that approach of continuing the discussion of potentially doing a resolution and then having our ducks in a row for potentially having to do an ordinance?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm not, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud. I think the discussion over what the trigger is going to be and what the number is going to be very difficult. So I'm fine with discussing it in advance.
Yeah. I don't think you're being a stick in the mud. You have legitimate points. Okay, so if everyone's Okay, I'm happy to start public comment. I see 2 hands up unless we have any more internal discussion we want to do before we turn it over. All right. So Neil, we'll look to you to bring folks over. All right, Steve Lux. Hi, Steve.
How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Perfect. So I just want to say I really appreciate the conversation you're having and the idea of maybe pushing this off a little bit and doing some more work on it before anything is really seriously considered as an ordinance. What I'd like to say is I really think that while you're going through these next weeks and potentially talking about this on an ongoing an ongoing number of meetings, is think about what can be done prior to a mandate. And so, when you think about how difficult it might be to enforce, well, what about trying to educate? And what have you already done to educate the businesses that you're concerned about, who don't already require masks, or maybe those that do? What are some steps that can be taken prior to trying to enact an enforceable ordinance? The other thing is, even if something's enforceable, have you considered due process? And I know a couple of you are attorneys, and so you have to consider, okay, so maybe if you get down to a point where there is an ordinance in place and fines are given out by whomever, well, you may have plenty of people that pay those fines and you may not. And what's going to happen with them? Because an individual has the right to due process. And if you think that the district court is going to even consider listening to a $20 fine not being paid to the town, I just don't think that's a reasonable thing. So I just hope that, through other means, like your resolution makes a lot of sense. Just saying that this is what the town believes, and this is what we hope that other businesses will do, and approach each business rather than trying to force them to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Bonnie Christie. Hi, hi, Bonnie.
Hi. Couple of things on the masks. I really appreciate the idea of, I think the way Stephen put it was getting the ducks in a row and getting something ready to go. And Ken's idea of having a trigger. As a senior, I see the flu season coming on as a comorbidity that I really worry about. I got the flu last year and I've never been so sick in my life. And so I have a lot of fears around that. So I appreciate sort of having things lined up and ready to go. Whether it's a resolution or an ordinance, I recognize that the enforcement is challenging, but it would be a powerful educational statement, I think, that the select board could make. Another thing that has nothing to do with any of the things on the agenda, a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 people did a presentation to the select board about doing something about Abenaki history and settlements in Hopkinton. And I wondered if you have on the top of your head the name of the contact person for that, and if there's actually something happening or if it was just sort of a discussion about an idea. I suppose I could research the minutes and get the contact name.
There've been a lot of articles recently in the paper about it, which has been awesome. I know Daryl Peasley is one of the names.
Okay, thank you.
And who was the woman who?
Yeah, it was.
I don't know, a Hopkinton resident. But,
she lives in Webster, I think. Neil, do you remember? I have it written down actually.
I remember Daryl's name, but not. He also was on the exchange on New Hampshire Public Radio.
Yeah, and so Bonnie, if you just Google about that, there'll be some news articles that come up, and I think they now have a Facebook page. So they're definitely they're working on it and
okay,
making a lot of progress.
Bonnie, hold on 1 second. I think I can pull it up for you.
Okay, thank you.
I might not be able to.
I was too lazy to look up the minutes myself. So.
No, I know I wrote her name down. Oh wait, I think I found it. Yeah. All right. Well, if I know it's in my notes, so I can shoot you an email with her name.
Okay, thank you very much.
You
Appreciate
seem to
it.
be spearheading it. So thanks for your comments, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Bob Lepre. Hi, Bob.
Good evening, all. Just to follow up a little on Bonnie's thing about the Abnaki project, Heather Mitchell at the Historical Society is also involved. She'd probably be a good resource for her to check with. I want to, excuse me, address the mask issue a little bit. A resolution, you know, it sounds nice and all that, but there's been plenty of media attention and public discourse about wearing masks. And we have to remember the mask does not protect you, it protects the other people who you are interacting with. And I have a whole house full of at-risk people. So we've been very careful. And I want to say that I go down to the Colonial Villager, and invariably I see a number of their staff members not wearing masks out on the floor, particularly the Fourniers, but others. And that's bothersome to me because they're the ones that are interacting all the time with all sorts of people. And so they can be a carrier very easily. And of course, you know, I see a lot of people in there, you know, customers without them. And I take that as a sign that they don't feel that they have a responsibility to other people. I know I'm clean, but I wear it all the time, you know, when I'm in that kind of situation. And I think it's wise for everybody to take that attitude because they don't know that necessarily they've been become contagious without knowing it. So an ordinance, I believe, is in order, but I wouldn't necessarily follow the ordinance as being enforced against non-mask wearers, but enforce it against the business people that don't require masks to be in their store. In other words, if you allow people to come into your store and not wear a mask, then you are liable for a fine. And I would make it a fairly substantial one. And that's a relatively easy thing to enforce because you only have one person that you have to nail. And that's something that, you know, a citizen could call the police department and say, you know, there's 5 people without masks in here, and I would like you to come and deal with the business owner. So that's one way to kind of, you know, make the enforcement much more effective because they're going to say, well, that's the bottom line for me. It's like when Walmart requires you to have a mask when you come in, and they have somebody that'll tell them you can't come in. I think they've modified that a bit because they can't stand the confrontations, but they got enough money to hire cops to do that. So, but my point is, I think we really have to consider mask wearing to be a public responsibility, not only on the board's parts, but our citizens. So, and as far as a trigger and that sort of thing goes, you know, that's like the closing the barn door after the horse is gone. So I think you should really consider a mask ordinance, but have it directed towards, you know, because we're talking about commercial establishments. That's where people congregate. And I don't believe that Enfield and Plainfield are a fair comparison town-wise, because they're both much more rural than we are. We're a suburb, for crying out loud. You know, half the people in this town work in Concord or Manchester. So, you know, we have a lot of interaction with the world that they don't. So anyway, I'll end it there, but I think we should really consider an ordinance that will be enforceable towards the commercial establishments. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. I see Ruth Chevion's hand.
Hi.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi. Thank you all for your research about the Bates Building, but I want to thank you all very much for taking this mask issue seriously, and a huge shout out to Bob Lepre. I never wanted to kiss you before, but we're on Zoom, so it's really not an issue. But the problem is the stores. what burns me is that they don't even have a sign on the door asking people to wear a mask. When you go into Colonial, hardly any, I know Bob was nice about it. You go in there, hardly anybody's wearing a mask, hardly anybody. And same with the Cracker Barrel, which has, I, as an older person, I have to, I can't shop in those stores anymore. I can't go in those places. I have to drive all the way up to exit 9 to go shopping. I mean, you know, as an older person, I know to stay home and wear a mask and all that sort of thing, but the stores at least should have a sign on the door to please wear a mask, and they don't. Thank you. Thank you for caring about this and taking it so seriously.
Thanks, Ruth. So there's no hands up right now. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Catherine Mattio. I hope I got that right.
Hi.
Hi there.
Catherine Mattio, 108 Park Ave. There actually are a bunch of stores in town that do have signs. The shops near the railroad station have signs and they ask that you wear them. The gas station does. I don't think picking on business owners, you know, I'm totally against a mandate or an ordinance. And I wear a mask when I go out in public, and I make sure my kids wear masks when they go out in public. I just don't think going through this exercise as a town and then putting the burden on our police officers to enforce it, and then putting a burden on business owners to enforce it is the right way to go. We've never done it with SARS. We didn't do it with MERS. We don't do it with the flu. We didn't do it with swine flu. This is a slippery slope, and I hope you guys were able to read my email I sent a couple weeks ago. It's just, you know,
We did. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I guess the famous quote is, you know, people that are willing to give up their liberty for a little bit of temporary safety deserve neither. And I feel really strongly that that's what's appropriate in this situation. You know, washing your hands also has been proven as a scientifically effective way to prevent spreading this disease and many diseases. You know, are we gonna pass a law that you have to wash your hands and prove you're washing your hands? It's just the nanny state. I feel really strongly about that. So thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I would just respond that I think this is very different from the flu. It's different from those other SARS and MERS and the other things you mentioned, because the nature of this coronavirus is so contagious. There's so much we still don't know, but what science is bearing out is that this disease can be incredibly devastating and have really long-standing side effects and cause other health issues. And you know, reading the data and the science that's emerging is really scary. And I think, you know, the flu is scary in its own right, but it's been around. It's a known entity. We have a flu vaccine. It's just better understood. This is so new. It is, in fact, a global pandemic. So that's the backdrop to this discussion. So I take issue with this notion that, you know, us discussing this or things like mask mandates are overreach. That is precisely what we should be talking about. These are simple, reasonable things that we can do. And maybe it's a little bit of a burden for our police or our businesses, but a little bit of burden balanced with public health, that's what we're trying to do. So I just would really emphasize that we cannot compare this to the flu. We can't compare it to past viral illnesses. This thing is, you know, it's devastating states. It's devastating countries and economies. So I just think we're in a different realm with this. So I just want to put that out there. Alyssa McCann.
Hi, all. I just want to say thank you for considering both a resolution and an ordinance. With winter coming, I've become more and more concerned about how I'll be able to engage and shop in town with the lack of other residents who are wearing masks when I'm out and about. Um, as someone who has a child under the age of 2 who cannot wear a mask, it's really hard to shop in town now. And I'd really love to support our economy, but it involves folks wearing masks here so that I can enter the stores. Right now, I'm able to attend our farmers markets and other farms that are open air where they are still requiring masks. And to what Catherine shared, hand washing is required in restaurants by employees, but yet mask wearing currently isn't. And so there are things that are standard that we as a public have accepted to be standard, whether it's hand washing by restaurant employees, seatbelt wearing when you're in a car. And I think right now it calls for things like wearing a mask in public to protect those around you. And to what Anna said, I think one of the most important things we need to focus on is keeping our schools open this fall, winter, and spring. In order for many of us to get back to work, our kids have to go back to school. And if we as a community don't buckle down and take every necessary precaution to ensure our numbers stay where they are, our kids are going to be back in our homes. And it is so incredibly hard to work when they are home. And it hurts our entire economy and our community. And so I don't have suggestions as to enforcement, and I don't want to pick on business owners, but I do want us to rally the community and have them take it seriously that this is a public good we need to do to keep us working and shopping locally. So thank you all for considering it. I know it's incredibly hard, but it's so important as we head into the winter months that we have a way to protect our entire community when we can't rely on open air solutions.
Thanks, Alyssa. Bob Lepre.
I'm back.
Hi, Bob.
I just wanted a little bit of a rebuttal. People seem to accept the sign on the window that says no shirt, no shoes, no service. Oh, geez, that's really affecting people's civil rights, I suppose. But the fact is the store owners have a right to do it. I'm not sure why, except probably they don't want to look at half-naked people and they don't want people dropping things on bare feet. But the point being is that the stores do have the ability to deny service to customers that don't fall within their certain kind of guidelines. And it is a public health issue. And that makes it our responsibility to deal with it however we can effectively. And as it's become quite obvious, there are many people that have no interest in wearing masks. It's some kind of badge of dishonor or honor. It's hard to know, but it's really counterproductive to the health of everyone. It's, you know, an example would be, okay, you don't want to wear a mask. Okay, well, I don't want to wear a mask, but you know, it's like I can go out and be drunk driver. It probably won't hurt anybody, but it might be you that I kill. So let's think about that as being an analogy, though it's very harsh, but it's similar. And we have many very stringent laws against drunk driving for very good reason, because it's deadly. So that thinking in terms of, well, I have my rights. Well, you do have rights, but you don't have a right to be dangerous to your fellow citizens consciously. And that's what we're talking about here. And, you know, there's lots of people that just, you know, they cop an attitude about it. Now, one person did say that, you know, most of the people in the Colonial are not wearing masks. I don't find that to be the case, but I do see a good percentage of customers. And like I've said, I've seen staff, and I've seen some really unsettling staff things. So I think, you know, this is an important health issue and we have to address it forthrightly. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. All right, we'll give one more chance for folks who want to speak on this. All right, well, we will move on. And Stephen, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back and make sure I understood kind of what our path forward is. So are we going to work on a draft resolution and who is going to, you know, take on that laboring oar? And are we also going to start drafting an actual ordinance? Are we going to wait and see what some of the what Concord does or what some of the other comparable towns do first.
So I would like to move forward with a resolution. Sounded like everybody was okay with that. In terms of drafting,
There's some good examples.
Yeah.
For resolutions right now. Lyme has one, Portsmouth has one, New London has one, that are currently in place. So there's some good examples to look at. It probably wouldn't be too hard of a lift to start that draft. I would be happy to pull some things together.
Can you circulate those, Anna?
Sure thing. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
yeah, and then maybe we could vote to adopt a resolution potentially next meeting if we had something that we could all agree on, if we can move that quickly. And then in terms of an actual ordinance, I mean, I liked when I looked at some of those smaller towns, some of them are really short and straightforward, and I think could serve as good examples. So I'm happy to put together like a draft ordinance. And I guess we could all sort of be weighing in on that, and just have it, you know, try to hash it out and have it waiting ready if we need it. I think we might need to have another conversation with outside counsel about any other issues to be aware of in the event we do want to move forward with adopting an ordinance. So Neil, do you mind reaching out to legal counsel and sort of maybe getting a list of things we need to be aware of or concerns if we move forward with an ordinance?
Is that the best way to do it, or do you want to work on a draft and then send the draft?
Yeah.
I think that's because it's pretty hard for them.
I'm going to suggest to do what Neil just said. Let's figure out what we want to do and then get comments on if we're, you know, in trouble or if we're on solid ground or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm happy to put together a draft and then we can just discuss it. You know, if I can get something put together, we can discuss it at our next meeting potentially. I think the big things will be enforcement and scope, as somebody, maybe it was Steven said earlier. So,
and I think the bigger question that we need to answer as a board as well is what is our threshold? What data, what metric are we using, and what, you know, what number do we need to get to in terms of that metric to decide that we want to enact an ordinance. And the other thing is there will be a time lag because we have to hold a public hearing on the ordinance. So I think it's, yes, we should have it ready. But then we need to set our threshold, I would say, somewhat conservatively, because there will be a time lag in order to implement it. But that's, I mean, and I don't know, we don't have to have the discussion now, but like I said, I'm following a lot of this data, and I've been looking at other states in terms of school reopening, what numbers are they using for their thresholds? And I don't know that there have been, I haven't seen anything of other towns or cities using this sort of threshold metric, like a decision matrix type thing for when to enact an ordinance. But you know, if we can independently go do a little bit of research on our own, think about what, you know, I can suggest a few types of metrics that we could use. And if we want to do it at the town level, the county level, the state level, you know, they're all, we just have to find the data that makes sense for us. So I think that's something we all need to be thinking about. And maybe at our next meeting, I'll sort of come prepared with an idea. And two really common data points are daily new cases per 100,000 of population for the county. And the other is the positivity rate. So number of tests taken and how many of those are positive. And the tricky part about that is that we don't have granularity enough, I think, I don't think we have that number at the county level, unfortunately. We'd have to, maybe DHHS has it, but they're not publishing that right now. So we'd have to dig for that a little bit, but it's another valuable one. So.
Yeah, I'd agree that we, have to spend some time trying to develop what the triggers are. And one reason I suggested looking at state data for a positivity rate as an example is what we've seen is that the cases are more to the south, and that would probably give us some more time if it's heading north towards us.
Okay, so to summarize, Anna, you'll circulate some sample resolutions. I'm happy to then work on a draft and we can talk about it at the next meeting. I think, potentially that's a tool, like Steve Lux mentioned, doing things to try to educate folks. I mean, maybe that would help push some businesses to putting up signs if they haven't already, or being a little more stringent about enforcement if they do have a rule about it. So I think that is worthwhile. And then in terms of the ordinance, I'm happy to put together a draft of that as well. And I think we can discuss at our next meeting. And once we have, I think we can have that drafted and then go to council. And then the separate issue is this idea of a trigger / threshold. And that's going to require some more research and thinking. So I think we can discuss that at our next meeting, because I think that's going to be a tough thing to determine. So is everyone okay with that plan? Okay. All right. Thanks to everyone who called in on that. And we will have an additional public comment after we finish new business and town administrator updates. So on to new business. We have St. Andrews Kimball Cabin use request.
So let me pull up their request. So basically, St. Andrews would like to be able to use the outside at Kimball Cabins for a gathering of 50 to 75 people. Their guidelines, which they would follow, you have. And given normally, if somebody requested that, they would be told you can certainly gather there. There may be kayakers and everything, but given where we're at, we've been bringing all these requests to the board for their decision.
When do they want to do it, Neil?
They are looking for September 13th. Sorry, I thought I had shared this. I'm looking at it and forgot to share it.
And the guidelines that they have in place, that's how consistent is that with what we're doing, say, for the farmers market?
They're very consistent. They look like pretty good guidelines. They come from their state diocese. It looked like.
The current state guideline is gatherings of 100 people or more, right? Are
required to wear masks, although they're going to wear masks under their own guidelines.
Yeah.
And Neil, they were not planning to have a tent. They were just going to be outside irregardless of the weather.
That's correct.
The only thing I was trying to find in their guidelines is around, like, will they still try to be 6 feet apart, or distance apart? And just thinking about like the farmer's market, I mean, does that say, it doesn't, what is the event? What is like the nature of this?
What this is, I think they're having a Sunday morning worship.
It's a service.
I see. Okay. So it's a service. Gotcha. Okay, good.
I thought I saw social distancing somewhere in there write-up.
Yeah.
Yes, that I'm sure I know I read that. As well as tracking who's there and all of that for if something should go in.
I thought I saw it, but I don't see it looking now. I think if we're uncomfortable letting it go forward, then we could always say, you can do it, but we'd like to make sure you adhere to the 6 foot distancing.
Yeah, I'm not actually seeing, I'm not seeing anything about masks in here.
So on page 8, it says outdoor worship, etc., are allowed.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, for outdoors is safer than indoors, but then it says the same protocols regarding masks, distancing, and cleaning must be in place.
Page 5 also says use of face mask, distancing at least 6 feet away, using hand sanitizer, and observing other guidelines from the state.
Yeah. They're referencing the safer at home,
Mm-hmm.
too, which includes all those things.
Is this just like for fun, or have they not been meeting inside?
They have not been.
I see.
They've
Okay.
been-
I just was curious as to why they, if they had been, why they would then make the switch. Okay.
They've been having Zoom church.
Gotcha. All right. Well, similar to the like concert question, I feel a touch torn personally, but I don't know if others have thoughts on this.
Do we know if there's any sort of a plan about using the restroom? Is there a porta potty there right now or nothing?
There is a porta potty.
Okay.
So, which we have signed that it's not cleaned, use it.
Okay. And do we know if, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, will it still be there? Are we pulling the canoes soon or the kayaks?
That porta potty stays there for the trailhead.
Got it.
So.
Do we, that space, do we let other groups come in like with any frequency to do things there in such a large number?
School does gatherings. I'm trying to think. There are different things that are there, but because it's public property, they can use it, but they can't close it off to other people at the same time. So certainly people can come and go hiking. That's pretty much our standard. That is our standard procedure.
I guess I'm comfortable with it because it sounds like it's consistent with some of the other uses of public space that we've allowed so far, such as the farmer's market and the concert at the gazebo. And they have guidelines that are, if not the same, then pretty close to what we already would require otherwise. And it's going to be outside. So
does anyone else have concerns about, there's several churches in town. I'm just thinking about other churches wanting to use town space for outdoor services
I think
and
if they,
accommodating all of them.
if they wanted to do it, then they can make a request and can.
Again, it's not reserved for them, I don't believe, is it?
No.
It's just they're gonna show up.
Yeah, I agree with Steve and I'm supportive of their request.
Is it just one service?
Yes.
Just that one day.
One
As
day,
it is for now.
2 hours. I think it is.
Yeah, 10 to 12.
Also seems like it's something similar to graduation, similar numbers of people, similar length, that kind of thing.
It feels very different from a school thing to me. I mean, it's a church, and I think like even the concert series is different because anyone could go to that. Everyone was welcome to it. It just feels.
Anyone's welcome to this too.
I don't think they're going to turn anyone away.
No.
Okay, I guess I'm the only person who has any concerns about religious groups coming onto town property it just opens, we just have to be fair about it then. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, is that we can't make a decision based purely on the religious nature of this organization or another one.
I guess I feel like, the space is for townspeople to come and enjoy. And when you have potentially 75 people in that space, it does, add an element of maybe infringing on people's use of that space. And I guess I don't love the idea of opening up town space for churches to use.
The members of the church are taxpayers in the town as well.
Well, not necessarily. The church is located here, but they could be coming from out of Hopkinton.
It's more likely than not that the majority of their parish is from in town.
I think we need to be careful about basing any decision on the religious nature of this organization. I think there's some First Amendment issues there that we want to try to steer clear of. If they are, I think we need to look at it as just the number of people that are there. And if they're going to adhere to the guidelines that we would impose, but they've already kind of volunteered to impose on themselves, and there's no kind of competing request to use the same public space, I think we're hard pressed to say no to them.
I don't think so, Stephen. The First Amendment issue would be if we were unfair in how we opened up town spaces to religious groups. There's no obligation for us to accommodate religious groups in town.
No, there's no obligation, but there's no competing request or no basis that I've heard so far that we can use to deny them.
So your argument is that every town space, if it's requested to be used by a religious group, we'd have to accommodate? That just does not sound right to me.
No, but I mean, it's a public space that we let groups use, and they've made a request. And as far as I can tell, all the kind of criteria that we would want to check off to let a group use it has been satisfied.
You're saying we can't deny their use of the space based purely on the fact that they are a religious institution?
Yes.
And they're not actually required to ask to use the space. If they all showed up there on Sunday morning and hadn't contacted us at all, there's nothing we could do about it.
Right.
Now, if me and the softball league wanted to have a barbecue out there that same morning, we'd be competing, but they couldn't throw us out, we couldn't throw them out.
Well, and then you get into a situation of, over 100 people gathered in one space.
I understand that, but they've committed to not have more than 75 in their request. And we don't have Stephen's right, we don't have a basis to tell them no.
Okay, I disagree with that premise because it's a town property. And so we can decide who can.
But our policy is not to require reservations for use of the space.
All right. I just think, we should all be aware that if we're allowing one church in town to do this, then we have to be prepared to then, say yes to every single church that wants to do something outdoor on town property.
As long as they're following other guidelines and laws of the town and state, I think that is right.
Okay, do we need a vote on this or?
I don't know that we do, but
it's the
request
right?
of the recreation director.
Letting us know.
Okay. Well, thank them for the heads up. It's been an interesting conversation. And all right, so I guess we can move on to the refuse disposal committee letter.
Which is actually the waste reduction committee letter. I confused my committees. This is a letter, and Jeff may know more about this than I do, but one of their members, Abigail Stone, would like to send this to the monitor. And the thought was it would be good for the board to review that before that happens, sending it as a member of the Hopkinton Waste Reduction Committee.
She's actually a high school student who wrote this, who's a member of the committee. It's essentially a reduced reliance on plastics bill that's before Congress, or was at the time. This was written about a month ago, I believe. And the committee is heavily in favor of limiting the use of single-use plastics. And this young Abigail Stone has drafted this letter. And
is it sent from the committee or from her individually?
It's from her as a member of the committee. We were pretty specific about that it couldn't come from the committee. Or we didn't think it could come from the committee, I guess. But that she, as a member of the committee, had the ability to send it just on her own and not reference the committee, but she had an interest in, being able to refer to herself as a member of the committee, and that brought up the issue of, well, then you better send it to the select board for review to make sure that there's no conflict with that. And being a new guy, I don't know if it's a conflict or not.
I guess it sounds like she's not speaking for the entire committee. She's just sending it and she's saying, I'm a member of this committee. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes. And I mean, she's a very knowledgeable young lady. We asked some questions. She was able to come up with answers. But again, she's enthusiastic. We certainly don't want to take that away from her if we can. But I just didn't know if there was any sort of a precedent for letters to the editor on this sort of thing and referencing membership in a committee, a town committee.
Neil, can you scroll down? Is there, because it's cut off where
it's just,
okay, that's it.
There's nothing else.
Got it. Speaking for myself, I don't have any issue with this. Because she's not speaking for the town. And it looks like she's saying that she's not speaking on behalf of the committee either. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it also.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do we need any kind of a vote, Neil, or we just,
I think in this case, unless the board feels they want to do one, it's fine not to have one.
very good.
All right, thanks, Neil. So next is town administrator updates.
Sure. Robin is on vacation the next couple of weeks. Current use update letters have gone out to everyone in town with current use. So we've been helping people work through those. It's really just an update, to make sure we have the correct data. Grading chart for the current use land, as well as an accurate map of the portions that are in current use and the portions that aren't. So that's going on. We received notification, if you remember, there was talk about a rail trail grant that has been denied. So that's off the table. If you have been around town, Kearsarge culvert has been replaced. I don't know if they opened the road today. It should be pretty close to being opened.
Sign was gone when I came back, so I guess it's open.
Okay, so good. And they are working on the Briar Hill Road culvert. So that's good. Other than that, we're getting ready for the election, and that's gearing up for budget season. So that's pretty much where we're at.
Neil, we have a letter from regional planning in our packet about the 10-year transportation plan. What do we need to do for that?
Yes. That was an update. You had before wanted to submit something, and they had met with you about the intersection off exit 4. And I guess the question is, do you want to resubmit that because that wasn't in the plan, and just resubmit it the way it was to see if it would be added to the plan? And if we can pull all the old stuff out if you want to look at it to see what the plan was. I think it was simplifying the whole entrance coming off of exit 4.
Right.
I thought it was listed on there. Did I mishear, Neil? I thought that exit 4, they were saying they were going to make it a roundabout at exit 4.
At exit 4. So
Yeah.
maybe it did get in there. Maybe.
Yeah, that list that was on the end of it. I think it was the very first project on the list, if I'm remembering correctly. Hold on.
It was submitted, but I don't think it made it into the 10-year plan.
Oh, maybe that's the difference.
I think that was the region. It was on the regional planning commission's list, but
Right.
not in.
Just the 202-127 intersection is on there right now. That's the only one for Hopkinton. Right. Sorry, I'm like looking at it sideways on my computer.
Yeah. Actually, if you had any new projects, now would be the time to begin preparing those to submit.
Great.
But then it was listed, and I don't know if that's what I'm confused about. Is what did the fact that it was listed mean, and do we even need to resubmit?
Yeah, it is listed on the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission's list. And they would help update that if you want to leave it on their list.
Or are there other, I mean, that's the question, right? Are there other things that we want to try to bump up?
Add to that list of,
Mhm. So just in terms of process, so that exit 4 project had been proposed to the DOT, or it has not, but it's on the radar of regional planning.
It is, and I believe it was last time around, but it did not. It was kind of cut fairly early, if I remember right.
Okay.
Certainly, even within the region, was not one of the top projects.
Right. Right. All right. So, I don't know, Stephen, do you think that this is something that economic development should look at and brainstorm around projects to propose? I mean, what we should probably talk with Karen Robertson about it. I mean, what are the right steps here?
Yeah, Neil, is there a time frame for us to respond? I looked and I haven't been able to find the document to pull up, so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's, I have it right here. Thursday, October 1st.
Okay.
Is the
then yeah, I think that's a good point, Anna. I mean, maybe we should pump the brakes on this and ask Karen. And I've been meaning to reconvene the EDC anyways, and this would be a good thing for us to discuss and just see if there's a project that we'd want to promote above this one.
Because there may be some that would be more effective than that particular one.
Even. Yeah.
Right. And maybe they might have insight as to why it was not put on the list too. That just may just not have regional significance in the way that some other projects might. I'm thinking even of like something in Kentucky, or there's tons of state roads, so we can think about places that would have sort of the most impact.
Yeah, Neil, do you mind reaching out to either regional planning or DOT and just asking if they have any more information about why it got cut last time around so early? Because that may help us find a project that is approvable or listable or whatever we're shooting for here.
And we should really tie it into the next draft of our master plan as well, and look at the transportation chapter there to see what the town priorities are.
Yep, that's a great idea. Yep.
Because my sense is the Regional Planning Commission brought this forward more than it came from within.
I'd be curious why then, if it's in our town and it's not maybe the priority that it is for them, why is it such a priority for them?
All right, and that's
Thanks.
my report.
All right, is that it for administrator updates?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we can open it up for public comment if anyone wants to comment. I see Steve Lux's hand is up. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how are you again?
Hi.
So I just wanted to comment on the 10-year plan, DOT 10-year plan. I wonder if the reason that particular intersection wasn't really seriously considered might have been the fact that there's not a lot of accidents that occur in that location. I know that back when I was on the board, there was a lot of conversation at the 202 and 9 Maple Street intersection, and one of the reasons why it became a priority was because of the safety factor. And so I wonder if that is part of the reason why that isn't as considered now. But my other, I wonder if there'd be a suggestion from me to maybe look at the downtown intersection of Kentucky right in front of Mr. Mike's. I know that many years ago, and Anna knows, Stephen knows, well, maybe you all know, about some of the proposed plans that the town had really put together on reconfiguring that intersection a little bit and that center of town. And I wonder if something like that might be in a reasonable scope for what the state might assist with, and maybe tying in some upgrades to sidewalks and things like that. So I wonder if that might be a reasonable project to see about putting on that plan.
Yeah, there's nods. I don't know if you can see us or only hear us, but people are
Oh,
not.
I didn't have the screen up, but I believe you.
Okay, so you're getting some nods from your EDC folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had just mentioned, that maybe something, that sees more of varying types of traffic would have more significance, for example, in downtown Kentucky. So yeah, thanks, Steve. It's great.
Absolutely. Yep. Good night.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Anyone else? Take that as a no. I don't think we have anything else except, unless anyone has anything for other, all we have is a non-public. So I guess, does anyone have anything for other? Okay. Well, then thank you everyone who tuned in and attended. And we will do our non-public session and then we are going to adjourn. So I think
I'll move that we go into the non-public session.
Yeah.
For RSA 91A32C for reputation, as stated on the agenda.
Second.
Okay. Yes, Stephen.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna tune out. Thank you, everybody.
I'm going to take a quick break.
Sure. Okay. Ken left his microphone on. So, careful, Ken.
I'll mute him.
Safe.